Okay, I'm Peter from Lakenheath Alliance for Peace. For those of you who don't know, Lakenheath Alliance for Peace was set up a few years ago to oppose the return of nuclear weapons to RAF Lakenheath. We have a website, and we've got over 60 organisations in the Alliance, mainly from the UK, but also from other parts of the world as well. We hold regular vigils the third Saturday every month. And we've got a peace camp coming up on the 1st to the 6th of April. I will be sending out an email and later on I'll put a link up in the chat for people to visit our website. But this is not about me. This is about at our last peace camp, um, the local the Richard, who's going to be speaking in a minute, produced a briefing about how to make your local council and political parties allies in the campaign against nuclear weapons. So we've invited him back to give a quick presentation about the local authorities. I've forgotten what it's called now, and
Sorry,
and
I'll introduce it.
pardon?
I'll introduce it, don't worry.
I'll let him introduce it and also Mayors for Peace. So I'm going to hand over to Richard now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Peter. Good evening, everybody. I know there's a couple of people on this call that I do actually know and have worked with in the past. So I'm Richard Outram. I'm currently the Secretary of the UK and Ireland Nuclear Free Local Authorities Network, and I'm also the Chapter Secretary of the UK and Ireland Chapter of Mayors for Peace. My background is I've been an elected member, councillor in parish councils and borough councils. I've also been a policy advisor to senior politicians in my local council for about 8 years previously. And for the last 4 years, I've been basically involved in policy work related to nuclear matters, both civil and military, working on behalf of the NFLAs and Mayors for Peace based at Manchester City Council, which was the world's first declared nuclear-free local authority. So when I heard about the peace camp that the Lakenheath Alliance for Peace had, I produced this paper because unfortunately I wasn't able to attend the Democracy Day event that was held as part of the Peace Week. So I'm very grateful for being invited to address you today, and I wanted to kind of pick up on some of the points from that particular paper and look at your own experiences and questions as well. I'm going to kind of talk fairly generically because it's hard to cover every single base because local authorities are somewhat different, but there is some commonality which we can look at and some strategies that can be employed. One of the things that I did do in a past life, I was a peace studies student at the University of Bradford. And whilst I did that, I was actually working for Yorkshire CND on a bespoke project to actually convince local authorities to pass resolutions in support of the UK signing the TPNW, the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. And we had considerable success in West Yorkshire. So it's a subject that's very close to my heart, actually. So, Peter, do you want to bring up the slides? Okay, there should be one before. Okay. So thanks. So, I mean, obviously we can circulate these afterwards, but these have got my contact details on. The reason why I wanted to put this up was actually it is about taking action. It's obviously about taking action for nuclear disarmament. And I was kind of looking through the photographs I held in our archives earlier today, and I was very privileged to be able to go on a placement with the Mayors for Peace Secretariat in Hiroshima in 2023. And one of the things that I did do subsequently was go to Nagasaki And for anybody who hasn't been to Nagasaki Peace Museum, this is actually a replica of the atomic bomb that sadly fell on the city. So obviously, this is a reminder of why we're doing what we're doing, really. So none of this ever happens again, and we have no more Hiroshimas and no more Nagasaki's. So let's start with this poignant image, really. So next slide, please. So let's start with the basics, and apologies because probably some of you already know this. So if I'm kind of teaching you things, do bear with me. I just thought to start with, if we kind of look at the different local authorities we've got, because in the UK we've got tiered authorities. So we start from the ground up with parish, community councils, sometimes called town councils, particularly if they have a town mayor. And then you've got district and borough councils. So they're kind of the second tier local authority. They usually don't have responsibility for things like education and maybe road networks and the like, but they do deliver some other services. And then you've got county authorities, which are the kind of the third tier, the final tier in many of the parts of the UK that have the higher level functions. But then when you go to urban areas, generally you have metropolitan authorities that do everything effectively. So in bigger cities and larger towns, it's quite common to have a single, what I call unitary authority, governing all services, delivering all services. Now you can approach any of these really to try to get action in terms of resolutions or appointing peace champions or whatever you want to do. Parish councils sometimes will stay clear of things like this on the grounds they see them as political and they don't really want to get involved in that. But generally, you can approach any level of local authority. And of course, they're all represented, they all have councillors. Each of the councillors represents a specific electoral ward. There's generally three per ward in most councils, but sometimes there are less. There are some where you have two or even one councillor in a ward. Most councillors are elected for 4 years, um, and in some cases the councils elect councillors by rotation, so they'll elect in a three councillor ward, they'll elect one councillor 1 year, the second year, etc. And they normally have on the fourth year what they call the kind of fallow year, where we don't have any elections. But some councils have all out, so essentially all the councillors serve 4 years, and at the end of the 4 years, they're all up for re-election. In terms of the decision-making process, councils generally have two types of structure. They either have a cabinet structure or they have a committee structure. So in the cabinet structure, it's pretty much a replication on a local level of national government. So you've got cabinet members who are the more senior councillors that are appointed by the council leader, and they have oversight of specific portfolios. Now, sometimes those portfolios are of particular interest to you. So, for instance, you might have a cabinet member with a climate change portfolio, and you might find that some of the issues you're raising actually fit into something like that. The cabinet portfolios mean that the cabinet members have devolved power, so they have quite a degree of day-to-day decision making, which they'll make with in conjunction and with the advice of senior officers in the local authority. But they're all answerable to council ultimately, but they also have in a cabinet system something called an overview and scrutiny board or overview and scrutiny committee. So effectively what those are kind of backbench councillors, the ones that don't have any cabinet posts. And they meet in order to examine what cabinet members do, and they can also do what's called a call-in, so they can call in decisions for review if they're not happy with what's been done. So that's very much like a central government system where you've got, House of Commons committees that pull in cabinet members to question them and challenge them, and it's a very similar setup. The other type of council that you have is a committee system. So that's kind of the old style councils you used to have. So you'd have, an education committee, a social services committee, a housing committee. And there you've got collective decision making where, although they have a chair, they have a committee structure where the numbers on that committee are made up in accordance to political balance. So each of the parties that are represented on the council has an opportunity to have one or more councillors sit on each of those committees. So that's a slightly different setup, but both of them have to report to full council and get sign off, which ultimately is the arbiter of decision making. And so the full council is essentially all councillors meet periodically, and it's usually the case that the council's either got a council chair who presides, or in bigger councils they'll have a mayor or a lord mayor that does that function. Most councils operate to a 4 or a 6 week meeting cycle. The reason I mention that is because they have council meetings. It's only at council meetings really that motions are considered. And it means that there's only periodic times when you can submit motions. And most councils only tend to have about 6 or perhaps 8 council meetings a year. And one of those council meetings will be what's called the annual council, where they appoint the mayor, the leader, the cabinet members, etc. And another of those meetings will also be the budget. So that will purely focus on setting the budget and discussing expenditure and income. So you've got quite a limited number of opportunities to put something forward to council in terms of the issues that you're interested in. Okay, next slide, please. So obviously to actually take action and make things change, you need to make contact with people, and you need to have access to the decision-making process. So the first thing you need is clearly a supportive councillor or councillors. That's great if you've got maybe councillors that are involved in your local peace group or CND group that you can readily approach, or maybe if you've got green councillors who have an anti-nuclear policy anyway that you can approach. But it's not always that straightforward. And particularly if you're going for the lower level councils like parish, most parish councillors stand under a kind of independent banner. Many of them don't have an obvious party affiliation, so it's unclear who to approach. You should find that the council website has got all the contact details for your councillor, or at least it should have an email that you can get hold of. But another thing that's useful to look at, perhaps if you're not sure who to approach, is a register of interests. So councillors by law have to complete a register of interests within 28 days of taking office, and they should by law update it as well. And that's kept by the monitoring officer of the council, who's usually the most senior legal officer they employ. But there's a register of interest, and that should be online. Now, the reason I'm mentioning it is sometimes when people complete the register of interest, they will record membership of organisations that are sympathetic, could be sympathetic to your particular cause. So, for example, sometimes people do put the members of CND that you might not be aware of. Sometimes people will put things like Quaker down. Now, obviously, if somebody's a Quaker, they're likely to be very amenable to the kind of argument that you're putting forward. Another example might be Rotary Club. I mean, a lot of people don't realise, but Rotary Club was actually founded primarily to promote peace originally. So it has still quite a big peace element to the work that it does. And in fact, the Rotary sponsor a number of postgraduate scholarships in universities around the world, including 10 a year at Bradford University, where I studied. So it's worth having a look to see if there's anything there that you can pick up on potentially that might give you a sachet into approaching a local authority member that might be sympathetic. A lot of councillors also have advice surgeries. They were very common pre-COVID. They're less so now. But many of them still do have kind of monthly advice surgeries that you can go along to, and that's very good because it gives you a chance to meet them face to face. One of the things that you could do is, if you're not sure how to proceed initially, is ask them to give individual endorsement to the ICAN declaration. There's actually a councillor's personal endorsement form that they can fill in. So as local authorities can endorse the ICAN TPNW pledge, so too can and MPs can, so too can councillors. And that's something I developed as part of the work I did for Yorkshire CND. And that should be in the pack that I think that Peter's going to kind of draw attention to later. In terms of actually changing decisions or making decisions, some of the things are obvious. If you're in a political party, you can pursue a political party route. So, through your ward or constituency, then look to take a motion through to the council group. I mean, certainly, my background, I've been in the Labour Party previously, and we could do things through ward, council, and constituency and district party, then discuss it with the council group. The other thing, though, you could do is most councils permit members of the public to table questions to full council meetings or to cabinet meetings. So generally speaking, there's a section of the agenda which is usually 10 or 15 minutes where you can actually table a question in public, in a public meeting, to either the leader of the council or a cabinet member, as you wish. And we'll come on to some of the strictures of that later on. The other thing you can also do is you can potentially submit a petition to council. Again, most council agendas have a section for presenting petitions. Some councils will discuss the petition in full council, but others have petitioners committees that they'll take it off to, and you're usually invited to speak at. The other thing you can obviously do is, if you have a supportive councillor that you've contacted, is ask them to take a motion through their own council group and table it at a meeting of the full council. So they're kind of all ways to potentially get a motion to full council. But the other thing you can do is do it via potentially committee. If you've got a councillor that's on a committee that's of relevance to the issues that you're talking about, then you can perhaps go through that member to take it to that committee. Or if the council has a cabinet structure with cabinet members, because they have overview and scrutiny boards, it's also possible to ask councillors to actually raise it through the overview and scrutiny board, because the overview and scrutiny board has a remit to kind of look at wider issues of interest to the council to discuss, and it would then make recommendations to the cabinet members as to policy. Certainly in my local council, Oldham Council, that members of the public can even suggest subjects for overview and scrutiny board to consider. The other thing you could do is just simply contact the leader or a cabinet member and ask for a private meeting. That's the other thing you could do. And one way of doing that might be by asking a question at the council meeting and say, as part of the question, ask specifically for a meeting with a senior councillor to pursue the issue that you're interested in. Also, some council groups have paid political advisors, which is a job that I did in my local authority. So you can also, perhaps if you can find who they are, go through them, and they're more likely to have quite a lot of time to give you to discuss your request. But you do need to be aware of deadlines. I mentioned that there's a finite number of council meetings. They all will have deadlines when you have to submit questions and any petitions that you want to put in. They will generally also define the length of time you can speak and the format that you actually have to present in. And also be aware that some councils do allow a supplementary question. So you can ask a question, then say the leader responds to that question, you might be in a position where you can ask a related supplementary question, so you'd have to be prepared for that. The best people, if you're not sure about deadlines, format, how the thing works, how the agenda works, all councils have like a committee clerk system. So they'll have something like democratic services or member services they're there specifically to help you. They're there to help elected members, but they're also there to help the public navigate the system and actually be able to have input. So they're the best people to talk to initially. The other thing to say is that at council meetings, there are sometimes members of the press present, so it's always worth having some kind of media release available. So if you're asking a question or presenting a petition, to actually hand that out at the time, so at least they've got information to take away with your contact details for a follow-up story. And the other thing to say is if you're there in person, there's an opportunity to leaflet councillors entering a meeting. But you need to be aware that sometimes councillors arrive significantly before council meetings because it's quite common to have a party political group meeting with councillors from that group prior to the actual formal meeting starting, and that's so they can discuss kind of what their position is going to be on critical issues that come up in that meeting. So next slide, please, which I think is the last one. Yeah, okay. So things you might want to think about asking councillors about is the most obvious one is, there's obviously a drive, international, not just in the UK, to get local governments to pass resolutions calling on their respective nation to sign and ratify the TPNW. And, we've made some progress on that, but I totally appreciate it's not the best environment at the moment to pursue that. The other thing you could do, and here's a big plug, you could ask them to join Mayors for Peace, which is the organisation that I represent. So Mayors for Peace is basically an organisation founded in the 1980s by the Mayor of Hiroshima to pull together mayors from around the world to campaign for nuclear disarmament and on wider peace issues. And the mayor of Hiroshima is the president of that, has quite high profile internationally, and was regularly speaks at the UN and the like to try and promote the local government agenda that cities are not targets. So that's a possibility. There's obviously in some cases issues around nuclear weapons convoys passing through your area. A lot of municipalities are impacted by nuclear weapons convoys coming through the area, and obviously concerns about public safety. Something that's very close to my heart is to support nuclear test veterans and families, which again, you could say are the UK's a backshare. In effect, they've been exposed to radiation, often involuntarily, as they were forced to participate in British nuclear weapons tests, and still haven't received compensation or proper recognition for the suffering. You could also ask your council to pass a resolution in opposition to nuclear power. And you could link that, civil and military links between the two are worth actually drawing reference to. There's also divestment. You've got pension funds that are managed by councillors, local government pension funds managed by councillors with councillors on the board. That they contribute as councils. In many cases, much of that pension money is invested in companies associated with the production or maintenance of nuclear weapons. There's obviously council investments, money that they put into banks. Should they really be banking, or should they be using banking services from institutions linked to the nuclear industry and nuclear weapons? Again, you can challenge that. Possibly through the council. Obviously, I mentioned about Lakenheath and Marham about nuclear weapon deployment, either currently or in the future. And the other issue is, again, it relates to Lakenheath, but also nuclear weapons convoys, is a motion around emergency planning. Challenging that in terms of is it adequate? And this is particularly also an issue in areas impacted by civil nuclear plants, where there are real concerns about the inadequacy of emergency planning measures that are in place at the moment. So I've just listed some ideas there. So that was kind of very whistle stop tour. I realised I've just like bombarded you with loads of information. So I'm going to shut up there and invite any questions or comments, and thank you for your attention. Sorry, I sounded like President Trump then.
Can I ask something, please? It's Anne.
Hi, Anne.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah. Can you explain how the emergency planning works with local councils?
Yeah,
I understand this is quite a big issue at Lakenheath because there's things going on there that the local council doesn't know about. But
yeah,
in general terms, any local council, how does
yeah,
it work and what are their responsibilities?
yeah. All local councils are involved with local resilience forums. So they'll have a representative from a local authority on a local resilience forum, and it also includes first responders, so usual ambulance service, fire service, police, NHS trusts, effectively anybody who might be called upon to respond to a local emergency, whatever that is, be it flooding or disease or whatever. Um, They do publish local plans of contingencies that they've got, but interestingly, it very rarely mentions nuclear, or if it does, it's usually extremely vague. The issue in terms of, for instance, Lakenheath, is you're quite correct that the possibility of nuclear accidents hasn't been fully factored into the work of the local resilience forum. In fact, this is something that I personally wrote to council leaders about, and also the Ministry of Defence as well. And in fact, we published a briefing about this from the nuclear free local authorities, and it was a real concern. Of course, the problem is that the MOD maintains this position that they won't say whether there's nuclear weapons there or not nuclear weapons there. So it kind of lets the local resilience forum off the hook because they don't need to make provision for it if they're not aware of it. But it is an issue that needs to be raised, that there should be preparations made should the unfortunate thing happen. And it's not beyond the bounds of possibility because there's been several near accidents at Lakenheath historically, which I documented. I'll see if I can look up a quote in wrong, see if I can give you a quote. But they're pretty horrifying actually. Some of the things that happened. Um,
Who is it the local, sorry, people waiting.
um,
Is it the local council that is responsible for making sure that the local resilience forum functions?
It
And
it contributes to it. There's usually a lead authority. It doesn't have to be a council, though. It's sometimes a police service, for instance.
right, okay.
It just depends on the area. They usually have websites
Ah,
you can look up, but they're not always that good, to be honest. Some of them are not particularly transparent. I only know because I wrote to all of these local resilience forums. Many of them didn't answer. One of the problems is that they're not covered by the Freedom of Information Act specifically. You have to write to every single member of the forum with your Freedom of Information Act requests because the Resilience Forum itself is not covered as a body within the Freedom of Information Act, which is a major flaw of the legislation and needs changing. But yeah, we wrote to. I mean, I can share this with anybody who wants it. Yeah, we wrote to the Suffolk Resilience Forum, the Suffolk Joint Emergency Planning Unit, the MOD. Some of the responses I got back were either complete indifference or I've even been accused of treason and supporting the enemies of the state for asking these kinds of questions, especially the MOD. I'm sure they've added lots of things to my existing file as a consequence of the correspondence. But yeah, we've raised it with ministers and also individual um, local first responders as well. I was trying to look up a quote here. Yeah, so uh, that was it. This is the thing I was looking for. There was an accident on the 27th of July 1956 at Lakenheath. So involving a B-47 bomber. So it involved several nuclear weapons potentially. So it basically it crashed. It hit a storage facility with several nuclear weapons in, and the U.S. Air Force investigated the accident, and this is what they said in the report. They said it was only through a combination of tremendous heroism, good fortune and the will of God that this incident did not become a nuclear accident on a larger scale. And one of the accidents, I need to look it up, one of them involved something like a 10 megaton nuclear weapon that had exposed detonators. And it was only, again, it was a miracle that didn't explode as well. So I can understand why people involved with Lakenheath are extremely concerned about safety because there is this accident history. The other thing I just wanted to mention before I take other questions about emergency planning, the other issue is around nuclear weapons convoys. One of the problems there is that the MOD only notify the police in the areas that they're passing through. They don't notify anybody else at all, just the police, and they only notify them about an hour before they actually travel through their authority area. So there's minimal advance notice to anybody involved in emergency planning. And some of the advice within the guidance that's issued to first responders is very contradictory in terms of preparing crews that arrive at an incident. And in fact, some of those concerns I raised with the fire brigades union particularly. So that's another issue around emergency planning. Sorry. Next question. Sorry, Peter, you're on mute. Is it? I think it was Pam, actually, if I'm being honest.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hello, hi.
We in the West Midlands, we've been trying to get the West Midlands Pension Fund Committee to consider a motion.
Yeah,
And the West Midlands Pension Fund is run by the 7 metropolitan boroughs.
yeah,
And each one sends a councillor to the meeting.
yeah,
So they meet once every 3 months. And we always contact our councillor, the Birmingham councillor, to ask them to put forward our concerns to the committee.
right.
For a long time, councillors didn't even, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
For a long
Oh,
time, the councillor
yeah,
didn't even reply. Then that
yeah,
person was replaced by another woman who does actually reply, but she hardly ever goes to the meetings.
right.
It's really difficult to know how to get them to take any notice of what we're saying. The Palestinian solidarity campaign have been a bit more successful because they've been turning up at the meetings en masse and waving
Yeah,
flags and things.
yeah,
So we're going to start going more often to these 3 monthly meetings,
yeah,
but it is they just don't take any notice. I mean, it's appalling. They just completely deaf you out, you know.
yes, yeah. I totally understand that. I've had the same problem with Greater Manchester Pension Fund that I'm in. Same issues. It's very, very difficult to get an audience sometimes with councillors. They see the problem is what they
But
fixated is fiduciary duty, isn't it? What they
yes,
say,
that's right. Yeah, yes.
it's
But
our job to
we
get the
have
maximum
managed to.
returns. Yeah,
May I share my screen?
it's up to Peter.
Peter, may I share my screen?
I don't know if you can. Does
No.
it allow
Okay.
you to do it? Um, I think only hosts or co-hosts can share screens.
Right.
Well, I'll just sending a request.
Hmm.
I don't know whether that makes any difference.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I'm not that au fait with Zoom.
No,
It's
it's
the
fine.
first
Okay.
Zoom meeting I've run, so
Right. Can you see that now?
Can't see anything at the moment myself.
Uh,
Oh, hang on, something's coming up.
right. This is our website, and it's
Yeah.
about the Nuclear Ban Communities Pledge.
Oh, good. Right.
We have we have got quite a few councillors to
Oh,
sign the
yeah.
pledge,
You've
as you
seen that.
can
Good. Good
see.
stuff. Right.
Yeah, that was based on your work in Yorkshire, so that's what we
Yeah.
did.
Yeah. That's what we
But
wrote. Yep.
as the councillors are changing, the new
Yeah.
councillors, as they're being elected, are not signing now. The Labour ones used to sign, but
Right.
they've all dropped out now, and we're
Right.
basically only getting Green councillors to sign.
Okay.
So it's hopeless in Birmingham because there's only a few councillors. There's only one or two councillors in Birmingham that are Green. So we feel as though we're bashing our heads against a brick wall all the time.
Yeah.
That's our experience. I'll
Yeah.
stop sharing now.
Yeah. No, it's fair comment, and to be fair, sometimes you can't get anywhere with it. You do your best and you don't feel you're making any headway. So
yeah, there was a question in the chat about
yes, I
what
know.
happens.
If I may, I'll answer that next, and then we'll come to Sally's question. So Agnes was asking if a mayor signs up to Mayors for Peace, what happens when the mayor reaches the end of their term? So what happens is it's actually the local authority that signs up to Mayors for Peace. So there's an application form that they complete and submit as a local authority. So the intention is then that the responsibility passes to the next mayor. What a lot of councils do, or some councils do rather than a lot, they appoint a peace champion. And that's something we encourage people to do. So an elected member that takes on responsibility as a peace champion, I mean, most councils have armed forces champions now because it's armed forces covenant. Well, this is kind of the equivalent, but the opposite way, in the sense that it's around somebody taking responsibility for keeping this issue alive between moralities. Because one of the problems is with the UK that if you're changing mayors every year, it means you've then got to contact the new mayor to explain what Mayors for Peace is about. And of course, mayors change politically, and some of them are less sympathetic than others. And some of them, to be honest, don't want to be engaged with this agenda at all, either because they're hostile to it or because they see it as political and they're non-political mayors. So we get the authorities to sign up. And it's a pretty straightforward form. It goes via the UK Ireland chapter, and then it goes to Hiroshima for registration. Theoretically, they charge a notional fee, which is ludicrous. It's something like £11 UK a year to be a member, but it's actually a voluntary donation. So, and you're not disbarred if you don't pay it. So the finances are not a barrier to membership. So, if anybody's interested in that, if Peter can circulate my email address, I'm happy to help people about membership. If you do find that you've got an authority that wants to join, and any authority can join. One thing I do get asked sometimes is, do you have to have a mayor to be Mayors for Peace? Which makes sense. You don't actually. You just need to be a properly constituted local authority. Sorry, Sally, you've been waiting patiently. Thank you.
Evening, everyone. So I've actually got a couple of questions, if that's okay. So the first one's really straightforward, and I think you've just answered it, is can we contact you for advice if we feel the need to?
Sure. Yeah, no problem.
Brilliant. You probably gather that there's a number of us here from Finchley, which is part of the London Borough of Barnet in North London. We're a fairly new group, and we're very interested in taking on our local council.
Okay.
And of course, bearing in mind that there are elections in May, I wondered if you had any tips for us on how to kind of use the upcoming elections. And, you know, there's a green surge at the moment. It's very likely that our party will be standing people. So there's everything to play for at the moment. And it feels like it's a good moment to be sort of taking this on. So any tips on using local elections?
Yeah, I mean, actually, funny enough, with another hat on, I'm doing some work with the Welsh Anti-Nuclear Alliance, which is a combination of groups in Wales opposed to nuclear power, nuclear weapons. And we're actually looking to develop a manifesto to actually ask prospective Senate candidates to endorse. I mean, I wrote something last year, which, you know, was a Wrexham declaration for an event, which is quite a grand document that we did in English and Welsh. And badged it all up, and it, you know, as in effect a shadow manifesto. So you could do something like that, like a smaller version of that, and ask them to do a pledge. That councillor's pledge thing is a useful tool. And we really, the reason why that was developed was to kind of get councillors on a hook in a way to get them engaged with the issues. Because previously ICAN had only engaged MPs rather than lower tier elected members. So that could be one possibility. But yeah, you know, do get in touch. I'll put my contact details in the chat for anybody in case you don't get to see that handout. There was another question as well in the chat as well from
Can I just follow up?
Yeah, of course you can. Go ahead.
Is there any chance that we might be able to see the manifestos that you've written or that you're...
Yeah, you can do. Yes, that's not a problem. It's not specifically got anything at the moment about nuclear weapons, but it will have. And I've got a couple of colleagues that are looking to add bits on. So what I'd say is if you want to email me when that is available, I'll send you a copy of it. And that goes for anybody else. I'm happy to share it. It's not a problem.
Great, thank you.
But it's not probably quite ready yet. Right. So Emma was asking around, is it possible to find out if a council used to be in Mayors for Peace but no longer is? Can I ask which council it is? Emma, if you can let me know either in the chat or in person, and I can tell you perhaps now if I know myself, or I can find out. Hackney, right? Okay. I can try and check while we're speaking if there's any other questions.
Richard, could you check Birmingham as well? Because there was some talk about that, but it was a very long time ago.
No, they're not in. I'll tell you now. They absolutely. I've been trying to get them to join for ages. There's quite a lot of. It's shocking actually. There's quite a lot of large cities are not in Mayors for Peace. You know, for instance, Liverpool isn't in it, which absolutely shocked me, given the history of the city. But sadly, no, Birmingham isn't. Even though it's got a peace garden, which I've visited several times. Sorry, was there any other questions while I'm trying to look that up? Oh, sorry, Sally, did you have another question to ask? No. Click on this one.
Yeah, one of the things that's come up, and I don't know if people are looking at the chat, I put something in about the Lakenheath accidents.
Yeah,
It's also, we've got the CND demo at Marham on 28th of February. And we're also going to have a peace camp at Lakenheath on between the 1st and the 6th of April. So it would be good if people could come along with that. Or if you can't make it, perhaps do supporting demos in your local town.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Okay. My contact list. That's not. Can you send me your email, Emma, and I'll look it up and come back to you on it.
Yeah, another thing that I've done a page about this meeting with some of the links. It hasn't got the slides up there yet. I'll probably do a short video of this to put up there as well. And I might put some extra links like was it the West Midlands CND page that looked very
Yeah,
useful.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. The other thing is London CND did a community pack that's quite useful with various examples of letters and motions. Some of them are things that I work with them on, and it's quite that's quite useful as well. I think in the original briefing I did, there was also a motion from Stirling Council about nuclear weapons convoys specifically. If that's an issue you're interested in as well. Yeah,
yeah, I put some of the letters up as templates that people can download for
oh, okay.
covering letters and motions. I haven't done the Sterling one, but I can put that up as well.
Yeah,
So I've just extracted that from what Richard did for the Peace Camp last year.
yeah, yeah. Some of those materials are in that briefing actually, but there's probably additional ones since.
Another thing that's quite interesting is there's a don't bank on the bomb about disinvestment. So as well as councils, you can approach other companies as well.
Yeah, sure. I don't know if anybody else has any more questions.
Right. Have we
Thoughts?
had enough? Do you
Yeah, yeah.
think, is there anything else we want to cover?
No, I don't think so. If people do want to email me with any queries, that's fine. I mean, I can check things. I can send you information about Mayors for Peace if that's of particular interest. I can send you that. I'm happy to send you that briefing out that I produced as well if that's of use.
Yeah, if Richard, if you can send it to me,
Send it
I've
to
got
you.
people's email addresses because they've registered, and I can then do a follow-up email with
Right.
all the links. That might be an
Okay.
easier way of doing it.
Okay. Okay. No problem. Will do. Right. I'll do that after we've finished.
Oh,
Sorry,
Okay. Sorry, Annie.
that's all right. I was forgetting I was muted, you know. Um, do councils or people that are registered with Mayors for Peace, do they ever unregister?
Yes, that's happened on at least one occasion.
Right, but it's not common, is it?
It's not common, but
No.
one council that shall remain nameless changed political control to Conservative, and when I contacted them, immediately withdrew support.
Right.
They did have a bizarre situation where this is from my predecessor Sean Morris. They might be known to some of you.
Yeah.
Apparently, they had a situation where the mayor of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the two mayors, were coming to London and were meeting the mayor of London, and the mayor of London technically was in Mayors for Peace, and it happened to be Boris Johnson at the time. And he kind of shuffled it off to some very minor official where they had some very superficial meeting with him, and that was it. So you know, they can still be members, but maybe not in the hearts really be part of it. Okay.
That
Sorry.
raises a question for me.
Yeah.
Uh, you said the mayor for London.
Yeah.
Well, there is the mayor of the West Midlands.
Right.
Would that be somebody worth contacting?
Yeah, you can certainly contact elected mayors. It's something that I've tried before. I've not got very far with it. Because you've also got city mayors as well. So Leicester city mayor did actually get engaged with it. And I went to meet him and he signed up to it and they appointed a peace champion actually. He was a deputy mayor. So it's certainly possible for, you know, elected regional mayors to join Mayors for Peace, but it's just not particularly taken off. But, you know, I commend you if you can do it and you feel you can make some
I'm
headway. It's
I'm
worth a try.
sure I wouldn't be successful, but it is another route to take.
It is, yeah,
Because
absolutely.
also because it's the West Midlands mayor, it was something that we could tell him about our efforts with the pension committee.
Yes, yes, yeah, absolutely. In terms of, there's a question in the chat about are many councils active in Mayors for Peace? How many have a peace champion? We've got about altogether in UK and Ireland chapter. There's about 120 or so now authorities that are in Mayors for Peace. In terms of activity. Many of them are not very active, to be honest. We do have some that are very definitely active, like Winchester being an example, or Glasgow being another example, where we've got really passionate mayors that have got incredibly involved in the work. I'd say a minority of them have peace champions. We're slowly building the numbers up as an option, but it's certainly something I've been trying to encourage local authorities to actually do to raise the need for a peace champion. So we've got consistency between mayoralities. And the advantage of that then is if they have a peace champion, they can get involved in chapter activities. And, you know, if there's any international work with Mayors for Peace, they can perhaps be engaged in that as well. So, you know, if you're in a council that is in Mayors for Peace, you might want to look to establish a peace champion with your elected members, or alternately, you know, we can talk to any councils that aren't in Mayors for Peace to see if they want to join.
And one of the things that might be useful as well is to contact political parties. I think in your briefing, he did a letter to Labour Party, but there's also the Green Party. Maybe ask people before they stand for election. The more we can actually raise the issue of nuclear weapons, the better.
Yes, yeah, yeah. There's also obviously your party as well as another, you know, possibility. And we have, you know, quite a lot of people involved from Plaid and SNP as well, to be honest. Okay. Don't think there's any other comments or questions.
No, it is anyway, thank you all for coming along, and particularly for particularly from Richard. Sorry that I forgot the name of your organisation at the
All
beginning. It
right.
just completely
Bit of a
disappeared out of
mouthful.
my mind. So
It's a bit of a mouthful.
yeah,
Struggle to get all that on a business card, I must admit.
yeah.
Um, but thank you all for coming along. Obviously, you're passionate to pursue these issues with your local authority, so wish you all the best of luck, and please get in touch if I can be of help.